Speaking of live, we're going to have a live debate, ladies and gentlemen. 90 minutes tonight between Joe Biden and Donald Trump. It is the final debate before election night, and we're 12 days away. So do I think this is going to change anybody's mind? For lack thereof, unless Joe Biden or Donald Trump decides to derobe or something crazy happens, which I don't think is going to happen.
Could happen, Brian. You never know.
No, I don't think so.
Place.
Yeah, I don't think so. I think the point I'm trying to make is I don't think much of anything is going to change anybody's mind. However,
I think you've got about 12% of the electorate that is undecided, though, and it will change their mind or it will make their mind up.
Okay, but I don't think anything in the debate's going to do that. But I could be wrong. So joining us right now on the line is a UNLV debate coach over there at UNLV, and he's a professor, and this is what he does for a living. So let's ask him a bunch of questions about tonight. He is Professor Jacob Thompson, who joins us right on the line. Professor Thompson, thank you so much for being here. How are you?
Thank you, Professor.
I'm great. Thanks for having me.
Sure.
Absolutely.
So before we get to the actual debate and substance, let's talk about some of these rule changes. This is something that doesn't really happen very often in debates, right? Where a week before a debate, there's rules put in there for microphones. Now, I think I'm fair to assume that if Donald Trump didn't break in and interrupt about 1,000 times in the first debate, they probably wouldn't have done this. But what are your thoughts on this, Professor, about these mics being turned off? This doesn't happen very often in debates, does it?
So last minute rule changes are very uncommon in presidential debates, although, when the big things like the date of the debate and the topics for the debate are already decided, candidates and their campaigns are always left to negotiate and argue about the little tiny minutia type issues. And so it's not uncommon for disagreements like this to happen in debate negotiations. And like you said, I don't think that this would have come up had there not been so many interruptions, especially by the president in the first debate.
So how is this going to work? Can you explain to our listeners? Because my understanding is that when somebody has 2 minutes, they're going to be allowed to talk, but then they're going to put both mics on, so there still could be yelling back and forth, right? I mean, explain to me exactly how they're going to do this to our listeners.
Yeah, you got it exactly right. So in the first 4 minutes of each of the 6 segments, each candidate has 2 minutes to speak uninterrupted, and the other candidate's mic will be muted during their 2 minutes. So, if Biden gets the first crack at the fighting COVID question in topic number 1, Trump's microphone will be muted for 2 minutes, and then vice versa, right?
Right.
But during the crosstalk section, which is about 11 minutes, depending on how long the rest of that business takes, there can be talking over each other and interruptions because there won't be any muting. Now, it is possible, however, that the microphone technician or the microphone muting technician decides to or is instructed to mute later on, but I think that's unlikely.
Gotcha. Okay. So as a debate coach, I'm sure you would agree with me, 2 different styles here between Joe Biden and Donald Trump. Joe Biden is probably more of the meat and potatoes. He wants to talk about policy. He wants to talk about what he would do differently if he's the president. Then you have Donald Trump, who is going to insult. He's going to interrupt. He's going to mock. He's going to talk about how he's done an A-plus job with everything. So let's start with Joe Biden. If you had an opportunity today to talk to Joe Biden and give him some tips as a debate coach, what would you tell Joe Biden? What would you say to him?
Absolutely. That's a great question. So number 1 would be don't get flustered. Keep your cool. And you know that Trump is going to interrupt and do all of the things that you had said that he would do earlier. But, the key is for a presidential candidate to appear calm, cool, above the fray normally, right? And so that would be tip number 1. Tip number 2 would be to speak directly to the American people. And that's one place that Joe Biden was semi-successful, if anyone could have been described as successful in the very first debate, was when he looked directly into the camera and said, I'm talking to the folks at home, I'm talking to average Americans, right, and spoke directly to average Americans. That's the kind of thing that a lot of folks find convincing and persuasive.
Agree.
And I would also say kind of stick to his issues because, let's face it, the polls have him pretty far ahead now. And if he doesn't, fall off the stage, he's probably going to be perceived as winning by most people that already support the Democrats. So,
yeah, I tend to agree.
I think that he's in a good spot going into this debate, so it would be kind of don't mess up.
I tend to agree with everything you said there. Okay, so now let's go to the other side. Let's go to Donald Trump. Now, listen, whether he interrupts or mocks Joe Biden for a stutter or anything, really.
Is it possible for him to interrupt, though?
All right, let me just finish the question. So, yes, it is, by the way.
How?
So, he just explained it.
Okay.
You're going to have 2 minutes and 2 minutes, and then there's going to be an open mic kind of session at the end there where they will be able to go back and forth. But anyway, going to Donald Trump for a moment here. We know that he's going to insult. He's going to be that guy. that's fine. His base loves that. But, if it's going to change anybody's mind right now about voting, I'm sure you would agree, Professor, it's those that, are in the middle that are still undecided. So with that being said, what advice would you give Donald Trump for this debate tonight, which I think is far more important for him than it is Joe Biden, in my personal opinion?
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right that this is probably the most important political performance of Donald Trump's life. And frankly, in lots of ways, his future as the president depends on it. So my advice to him would be, number one, try to appear as a more empathetic person and someone that average folks can identify with. Public opinion polling reveals that Donald Trump's unfavorables are pretty high. And so it's hard to get anyone who doesn't like you, wouldn't want to spend time with you, doesn't see you as a normal person to vote for you. So I would say try to appear to be more empathetic. And frankly, part of that would be less interruption. Obviously, he's going to stay on brand and do what he does. Trump is going to Trump. But at the same time, he can reel that back in a little bit and show some self-control. I think that it would do him a lot of favors. And the second thing that I would tell him to do is to talk about kitchen table issues that really concern average Americans. And again, like I said for Biden, to speak directly to the American people. And so his message, I think, would be much more well-received if he was trying to talk directly to American people about the way that his policies and ideas would benefit them.
If you're just joining us, we're speaking with Professor Jacob Thompson. He's a UNLV debate coach. This is what he does for a living. And, of course, we have the last presidential debate tonight. So let me ask you this. There's going to be moments tonight where it's going to get personal. Donald Trump is going to bring up Hunter Biden. Joe Biden is going to bring up the pandemic, and he's going to put a lot of the responsibility on a lot of the deaths on Donald Trump. Do you think that is a fair tactic? Do you think both candidates should do that? And how do you think they should respond to that?
So I don't want to sound partisan here because I'm not trying to be, but I do think that there's a qualitative difference between attacking someone's family and attacking their response to a policy problem.
Sure, I agree. Yep.
So I do think that there's if for instance Biden was like, Trump, your entire family is on the White House payroll and started attacking them that way, that would also probably be inappropriate. I think that to a large degree, the American public is not very excited about hearing those types of personal attacks, and they think it's really kind of below the behavior that they expect out of an American president. Now, not everyone feels that way because some people feel that the American president should be bold, brash, and, tell it like it is. Obviously, right. Trump was pretty successful with that strategy in 2016. But again, the unfavorables for that approach are quite high. And if you look at favorable ratings or general positivity towards candidates for Biden, it's pretty high. And I think in part it's because he stayed a little bit above the fray.
Yeah. So, Professor, I have to ask you this because, and again, I'm not trying to be partisan. I'm not trying to go after one side or the other here, but I have to ask you this question because to me, this is just disgusting. So Chris Christie, pretty much, we've heard the story that when he was speaking with Donald Trump before that first debate, Chris Christie was trying to come up with a way to take advantage of Joe Biden's stutter. How to attack Joe Biden's stutter by interrupting him, by talking over him, by trying to fluster him. Now, I'm sure this isn't the first time that a politician or somebody before a debate tried to take advantage of somebody like that. I'm sure that's happened before. But I just find that so utterly disgusting, Professor, that even someone as a former governor of New Jersey would go and stoop to those lengths. What do you make of that as a debate coach, that politicians would go to those dirty tactics?
Well, in terms of politics, I guess nothing really surprises me anymore. So, it's hard to be more disappointed than, you already are in some cases.
Right.
As a debate coach, that's something I would never encourage my teams to do or, the students that I'm working with. Because, really as an educator, what I'm trying to do is foster, informed citizens who can make the world a better place eventually. You would think that someone who's coaching a president before a debate would have that same approach. But that's not always what we see in American politics these days. What
is the biggest mistake that politicians make in debates?
Well, I think that there are probably two real big ones. One is kind of the unforced error, the gaffe, which tends to attract a lot of attention from the media and is talked about a lot, at the water cooler the day afterward, et cetera. But the other is the other is falling into the trap of engaging with their opponent in a kind of line by line, like this is a high school debate, instead of understanding that the presidential debates are a television moment where their goal should be to talk directly to the American people and try to persuade undecided voters to vote for them or to mobilize their base to get out.
So it's been kind of a conversation that Joe Biden is the one that's constantly interrupted, and Donald Trump is the one that insults Joe Biden. But Joe Biden in that first debate, and you mentioned that you hope he doesn't do this, but he insulted Donald Trump 6 times. He called him a clown 3 times. In fact, in my opinion, and I'm a Trump supporter, but it seemed like he turned into the person that Donald Trump was supposed to be on that debate stage. Do you think that could happen again? Because I believe that Donald Trump, he's given 2 minutes every single question, and Joe can't interrupt. I believe he's going to mention Hunter Biden as often as he can, and I think that, and we've seen Joe Biden get flustered on many occasions, not just on the debate stage, but also on the campaign trail in the last 2 years.
Yeah, I do agree that, Biden must have forgotten his training, his pre-debate training when he fell into that Trump trap. I also think that was a big problem that Hillary Clinton faced in 2016, was that she kind of went down to the level of debating that Trump was doing with more personal attacks. And so if I were coaching Biden, my first and key instruction would be to not get flustered and offer him tips to avoid that and really stay focused on not really ignoring Trump, but not letting him get under his skin and focusing on talking directly to the American people, which is where I feel like he did a good job. But I totally agree, calling the President of the United States a clown, even if it's something you're thinking in your head,
right.
As a candidate, you ought to have that, internal filter, and that shouldn't come out of your mouth, probably.
So the vice presidential debate between Mike Pence and Kamala Harris was much more reasonable. They were much more respectful, in my opinion. Who do you think won that debate?
So in my opinion, I did some thinking about this. I initially kind of thought it was a tie, but I would have to give the edge slightly to Kamala Harris in that debate. And my reasoning for this is that I think that they both performed about the same, frankly, but that to get to a position where she was considered successful in that debate, Kamala Harris kind of had to overcome some additional barriers that Mike Pence, as a sitting vice president, as a male, et cetera, might not have had to. And so I'd kind of give a slight edge to Kamala Harris, but I do think that they both did a really respectable job in that debate, and that anyone who supports Trump probably thought that Pence won that debate. Anyone that supports Biden probably thought that Harris won that debate. Snap polls afterwards also tended to favor Harris by a 10-ish point margin or so. So that kind of tracks with my take on it. Yeah.
And by the way, I completely agree with you. And by the way, that's what I said on the air the next day. I said, listen, if you're a Trump supporter, you think Pence won. If you're supporting Biden, you think Kamala won. I absolutely thought it was a draw, and I don't think it's going to change anybody's mind. Okay, so the billion-dollar question, Professor, and it might be a tough one for you to answer now. But based on what you know about these two candidates, you've already seen them on the debate stage together at least once. What do you think is going to happen tonight? Will Donald Trump change his tune? Will there be less interruptions? Who do you think comes out of this thing on top? I know we're kind of talking like it's a football game, and who do you think is going to win? But that's what I'm asking you. This is a big deal, Professor. As you know, this is the final debate. When it's all said and done tomorrow morning, what are we going to be talking about? Who's going to win this debate tonight?
I think that's a great question, and it is the million-dollar question, right? But here's what I really think is the most likely outcome of tonight. Trump is going to play from the same book that he's used in 2016 and that he used in the first presidential debate. He's going to try to win the debate as if it were a reality TV show by being the most brash, the person that gets the most attention, the person that captures the news cycle for the next 3 or 4 days, et cetera. And I think that that's going to be his strategy no matter what. My guess is that will not appeal to a majority of Americans, and that Biden's goal will be to not mess up tonight, which he's perfectly capable of doing, right? So we've seen him perform in a kind of middling way through the Democratic primary debates, for instance, without a major unforced error. And so I think that the likely outcome of tonight is that Trump will do what Trump did in debate number 1. Biden will play conservative ball, and that ultimately the small single-digit percentage of Americans who are undecided won't be told anything very new by this debate. So I think that you're likely to see Biden emerge with about the same lead that he has now from the debate. Trump is going to stay behind. I mean, obviously the polls could tighten in the last 2 weeks, but
sure.
I don't think that the debate will cause that to happen.
I tend to agree with you, Professor, but this is why we have debates. We'll have to wait and see what happens. Professor Jacob Thompson, I really appreciate your time. Really good stuff. Thank you for explaining all this to us, and look forward to watching the debate tonight, as I'm sure you will as well, and look forward to having you on again sometime. Thank you so much, Professor. We appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. I had a great time.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.